Hey everybody, back to work week, right? So let's talk about another true crime vampires from history. We're coming back towards modernity now after talking about Eleonora von Schwarzenberg and Daria Saltykova yesterday. And today, now, I was going to be talking about John Brennan Crutchley from Florida, and I am still going to be talking about him. But he was called the vampire, that word. And so when I Googled those terms, I discovered that Richard Brennan Crutchley is not the only person who has that title, though he is considered the vampire of the United States. There is also a man who was named Wayne Bowden from Canada, who was also called the vampire. And so both of these were serial unalivers, and both the cases are worthy of their own unique episode. So we're going to stick with who I was going to talk about first, the first person that I knew to be as the vampire. And this story took place in Malabar, Florida. Look, I got me a handy-dandy notebook to reference for y'all to help me when I talk about this. John Brennan Crutchley, born October 1st, 1946. He was a convicted serial unaliver and essayer. Due to one confirmed case that took place in 1985, he was given the term the vampire because he drained the life fluid nearly fully of one of his confirmed victims, almost to the point of unaliving her, and then repeatedly SA'd her during this event. Now, this was an abduction. It took place over a time period of hours into days, and during that time, he SA'd her multiple different ways and drained her of life fluids through this entire scenario. He was born in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and his parents were William Bill Crutchley Sr. and Mildred Burnside. Now, according to the story, there were several victims that were cited to have been taken by John Brennan Crutchley, but only the one confirmed victim who was taken November 22nd, 1985, Laura Murphy, was actually able to recount what happened to her and was the one who was SA'd repeatedly and drained nearly to the point of unaliving. At the time of her abduction, Laura Murphy was 19 years of age. So the day before Laura was found, and she was found on the side of the handcuffed at both the feet and ankles, crawling, and several vehicles passed her before one motorist finally stopped to give her help. She begged that motorist not to take her back to the house that she had escaped from. And then he asked her which house, and she gave him the information on the house. Then he took her to her home, and the police and an ambulance were called. When taken to the hospital, Laura Murphy was determined to have been missing 40 to 45% of her life fluid, and she had ligature marks around her neck. She said that on November 21st, the day before, she had been hitchhiking and that Crutchley had picked her up. She told him that she needed a ride back to the city of Melbourne, Florida, which is where she was going. And that is when he told her he needed to return home to grab a notebook real quickly, and things turned south. When they got to the driveway, he asked her to come inside with him, and she declined. It was at this point that he tied the ligature around her neck and proceeded to asphyxiate her until she fell into unconsciousness. And then he drugged her into the house. Then he removed all of her clothing, and he strapped her to the kitchen counter island in his kitchen. Laura woke up and found herself in this position, completely immobilized. And there was a video camera set up along with different lights, and supposedly police believe that he did this because he wanted to videotape it so that he could revisit the incident later. Then he proceeded to SA her multiple times, and then he inserted needles into her arms to carefully extract her life fluids, which he then began to consume, while telling her that he was a vampire. Then it said that he handcuffed her and moved her to his bathtub, only to return later to SA her again and for another round of the bloodletting. The following day, after a third round of assaults and bloodletting, evidently Crutchley handcuffed her and left her in the bathroom. He told her that he would come back later for another round, and that if she tried to escape in that time, that his brother would come back to unalive her. It was during this time that she decided to take advantage of the opportunity to flee, and she got out of the house, and that's how she ended up crawling alongside the road where the motorist found her. So then after the police came and they got her statement, a search warrant was served for Crutchley's home, and evidently his wife and child, because this man was a parent and married, were away for Thanksgiving visiting relatives in Maryland. They were able to find the videotape. However, sadly, a good portion of it had been erased from the tape, and the victim cited after viewing it that a good section of what had been erased included her brutal essay. When the police went through on this first search, they found a stack of credit cards, a collection of women's necklaces, and multiple locks of hair concealed in a closet. However, they did not confiscate. Later, when they returned to do another search, these items were removed and they were not able to locate them. However, in that second search, they did uncover a stack of 72 index cards on which Crutchley had recorded the names of multiple women and a few men, along with their described quinky interests. And they discovered that he had a very intense interest in, like, bondage and BDS. His wife even admitted to being a partner with him in this, and there were videotapes of the two of them that were... But in addition to that, other content was found that showed explicit photographs of unidentified females that were bound and gagged, with his hands asphyxiating them, along with other photographs of just random women taken from the public. And so Crutchley was arrested, and later he did have a trial. He pled guilty on kidnapping and SA in exchange for them to drop a bodily harm charge, which would have given him added more time. And it was that time that he claimed to have been introduced to the act of bloodletting and sanguinarianism because of a nurse as part of a explicit intimate ritual that he took place in 1960. Nevertheless, the judge still sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison with 50 years of subsequent parole. And they began to have an FBI profiler by the name of Robert Ressler look into Crutchley, and he became convinced that Crutchley was most certainly a serial unaliver, and they linked him in possibility to a couple of other cases, including the unaliving of 15-year-old Kathy Lynn Beatty, and then the unsolved double disappearance of the sisters Catherine Mary Lyon, who was 10, and Sheila Mary Lyon, who was 12. On July 24th, 1975, Beatty was beaten and essayed in the woods near Aspen Hill Kmart and 7-Eleven in Silver Springs, Maryland. And then another one of Crutchley's ex-girlfriends actually was found, Deborah Rita D. Fitzjohn, which put him under the scope. Some of the other victims' names he might have been connected to: Patty Lou Volansky, Nancy K. Brown, Cheryl Ann Windsor, Diana Lee Casey, Kimberly Ann Walker, Lynn K. DeSantis, Pamela Ann Kimbrough, Carol Ann Molnar, and the list does go on. They say that he might have had as much as 30 victims. And he did subject Laura Murphy to repeat essay and torture, and he ended up passing away at the age of 55 on March 30th, 2002 in Bowling Green, Florida. And so, yeah, that's another true crime case from history. This is the vampire-ist from the United States, John Brennan Crutchley. Malabar, Florida. Look it up.